Dr. Am. Let's get stuck in.
Awesome.
Dr. Am, welcome to the Your Personal Training podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's an honour. It's brilliant to have you here in Swansea, and I know it's been quite a trip coming down from Derbyshire.
Well, I said that I was only coming if it was going to be sunny, and so far, so good.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's
We've
nice.
ordered the weather.
Thank you.
It's yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a great place when the weather's nice in Swansea. It's fantastic. But
yeah, it's lovely.
I know you're super busy. We're out of kind of term time at the moment as well, aren't we? So quite opportunist to get you down and get you in the podcast chair. And I'm looking at my notes, here, because literally I can't remember the last time I've written so many pre-notes for one of these sessions.
The pressure's on now.
Yeah, but listen, there's so much ground to cover today. You know, you've got such a diverse background, and you're from academia. You know, predominantly that's where you spent a lot of your career.
Indeed. Yeah.
But you've also launched, a gym concept as well with your husband Rob, and there's so much synergy. You know, we've got to know each other over the last few months, and there's so much crossover in terms of what we do at your PT and the network that we kind of inspire. So, I mean, for today, I'd like to cover 4 key areas. Firstly, looking at your career, looking at your background, so the listeners can get an appetite of what you're all about. We're clearly going to look at training considerations for women. We're going to touch on chronic disease and preventative measures that we could maybe consider as fitness professionals. And then the big words, we laughed about this earlier, menopause. I've said it.
You said it. Be careful.
Yeah. Well, this is it. But what I really want to kind of look at today is how this all links up to personal training.
Sure.
Why personal trainers, whether you're male or female, should be positioned to talk about things like
All this
menopause,
stuff, yeah.
so you can help your clients on their journey. So from a career perspective, what kind of lit the spark for you, going down academia and then into, operating your gym as well?
To be brutally honest with you, I have no idea how I got into academia, literally. I remember did an undergraduate degree, like a lot of us, in sports science, did a master's in sport and exercise psychology, followed a guide, as you do, down to South Coast. And then when I finished that master's, I was kind of a bit, God, what do I do now? And I literally was at a point in my career where I love sport, always been interested in sport, always been an athlete, always been super, super advocate for being fit, being healthy, and the confidence it gives you, especially as a woman, and the friendships and everything else. So I finished my master's and I was like, God, what do I do now? Yeah. And randomly a job came up in Reading, never been to Reading in my life. And I thought, you know what, sod it, let's apply. And this was a lecturing post, which was actually sport and exercise psychology. Yeah. And randomly, they'd appointed somebody and then they just turned around and gone, no, we don't want that. The person had sort of let them down or last minute decided not to come. So it was just one of those opportune moments. I was never in a million years qualified to take the position, but I was just in the right place at the right time. Yeah. I'd done my master's and then, started it at Reading University. And that kind of really... I wouldn't say it's something that I'd always thought about. Like I never in a million years thought, right, you're going to be a university lecturer. But do you know what? I loved the idea of, the students are great, being able to educate them, being able to help them, seeing the progression from, them starting in year 1, these green-eyed, 18-year-olds, and then really being able to help them, not just, for me, the academic side is almost secondary to the growth in them as individuals. And it's awesome to see them just develop as people and the confidence that they get in the 3 years you have them. And you do kind of feel a little bit like a sort of, at the time it was more like an older sister, because I remember the first year I taught, there was more, the third year, I think there was more older than me than younger, which did create some challenges. But but it was more about just helping them develop and giving them a little bit of education along the way, really. Yeah. And then 20 odd years later, I'm still in it. And it's an interesting environment. It's an interesting landscape, but still very much my focus is on just being able to give my experience over and see the development and the growth in individuals and how you can help them be better versions of themselves. But then also now, more so in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, it's been about how can I educate them to then go on and help others in this industry. And as we all know, being in the health and fitness industry, it's imperative. It's a non-negotiable.
Yeah. And that's probably why we get on so well, actually, because like the hallmarks of what you explained there are very similar to a personal trainer, because you're developing someone from a physical perspective, a mental health perspective, to go and do better things in life.
Absolutely.
And the education environment, I couldn't agree more. My university experience was absolutely that. Aside from learning a little bit of sport and exercise science, I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
And you learn so many, raw skills that you then take into life, and you meet different characters, different personalities that can really inspire you and shape you as an individual.
I think also if you look back at school even, I'd love to be able to say, or for my students to be able to say, 20 years ago, I had, Dr. Arm take me for a session.
Yeah.
And that's what really inspired me to do X, Y, Z. That has got to be the greatest gift as an individual, to be able to, somebody to go, that person at that point inspired me, and they've then gone on to do bigger and better things. And I also think, like, one of my students who I taught on a master's course, back in like 2010, I think it was, is now a lecturer at the same university I'm at.
Yeah.
And we always joke like that, the master, almost like the student becomes the master, and he's, excelling in his career. He works in motorsport and sports science. And it's great. I love that. I love that I can see his progression, and, the bond we have when we teach is just incredible. Like he's done so well.
And the lights you would have switched on over the years, and now having that, you're almost, it's a level of duplication there, isn't it? That people have now followed your footsteps, and they're doing exactly, the inspiring kind of journey that you've been on. They're doing themselves. So, It's amazing. It's really, really good. But the education landscape's probably changed quite significantly in 20 years. A lot of people would go back to COVID as being sort of the change, on the experience that maybe a student would have these days. Is it fair to say that is that still around? Is the experience almost diluted now than it was?
I think lots of things have changed. I mean, we don't have that drinking culture in teenagers and young people anymore. Clubs, initiations, they just don't seem, the world has changed. And you're right, I think possibly that has come from COVID. I think also, you look at they all communicate on their phones.
Yeah.
And we were saying yesterday, weren't we, about, you used to go to university, and the only way really to make friends was, you went to the clubs, you went to the the associations, you went to the, the groups, and you got involved. And we didn't have all of this technology where you could just, still keep in contact with everybody virtually. So I think, there's definitely been a change in landscape. But I think there's also, for me personally, I think students are now looking for more value in real world skills. And I think what we've, certainly in the last couple of years with things like AI, and it's not even go down that route, but certainly with that side of things, the academic landscape has massively changed. And I think there's going to be a lot of shift towards hands-on skills. We also, the other day, we were speaking about social connection. Like, one of the great things about the industry we're in is you can't get away from that, right? You get a good PT, you get a good trainer, and you're not with them because necessarily, they might they program you well, they know what they're doing, but it's the social connection that you have with them. It's the trust and the loyalty and the way that they communicate with you and how you feel safe with them. And you can't get that from an online app. That's and as great as these crazy robots are that may come out in 10 years time. I mean, I'm not being funny, but are you really going to get a robot to train you? I mean, can you imagine? I mean, that was just ludicrous, isn't it? But I think, because of that element of what we're in, and because it's so important to have that social connection, I think we're going to find a whole change in the way that certainly sports science will move forward. And it will be a lot more about developing, individuals that have that ability to talk to people. I mean, students come in now and they don't know how to talk. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to lead and guide. And I just think, wow, like you're not learning that in sat in a classroom. You're learning that going out there and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, it's definitely a skills gap that we see, you know, within your PT and as the wider sector as well. The ability to build rapport, have that soft skill approach, you know, build relationships, and it's almost like a dying art. And some of the interventions we've had to put in place in the last 12 months are we've actually gone outside of the industry to get the best caliber to then give education and guidance to new trainers coming into the business of how to position themselves, how to, you know, convey a message, how to build rapport. We've done a course with Ben Shepherd.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the TV
Awesome,
presenter.
yeah.
And it's amazing because he's an expert. He's an expert in holding someone's attention and conveying a message, which is exactly what personal trainers need to do. So I totally agree with that, Ath. I think there's been a downturn in the ability to have these raw skills of, you know, communication and being accountable a lot of the time as well. And maybe it does come from the technology.
Yeah, and I do think COVID as well, because that almost was a pinch moment, wasn't it? Where we had nothing and then everything went very digital. Yeah. I mean, now my students will ask me for online meetings. Very rarely do I get them asking for face-to-face. Yeah. And we never would have even entertained that, you know, before COVID. Yeah. But what also is quite interesting, I think, is there's an element of, you know, when you're training these individuals and when you have these sort of students in front of you, we have gone are the days where we're put into uncomfortable situations. Yeah. People don't like feeling uncomfortable. They don't know how to feel uncomfortable. And they don't learn that at school. Yeah. Do you know? Like, so for example, there's situations, and again, a whole nother topic we could talk about, but when you look at the way school works, you know, children are disruptive in classroom, or children are noisy, or children, so they're put in a timeout, which is then play, or we're going to go and make cakes, or we're going to go into an area which is sensory, rather than having to almost deal with that uncomfortableness at the time and learn how to cope with that in a situation where they have to be, you know, sat, and rather than sort of learning how to deal with that situation, we either go down one or two routes. We either say, well, no, you have to be taken out of that situation, or we medicate so that feels. And so, you know, we as children and going on, what we find is that children and then young people and then adults, we're never uncomfortable. So we don't know how to feel, and then we get scared and we get anxious and we get worried. So what I try and do with my students is, I'm not like forcing them, but I do role plays and action learning sets where I'll say, right, James, you're going to interview Bob over there, right? And they'll sit there and they'll be like, look, doesn't matter if you get it wrong, doesn't matter if you stutter, doesn't matter if you don't, you know, if you don't know what to say. Yeah. But what we're doing is we're just putting you in that situation so you're used to that feeling. Yeah. And it will be uncomfortable, but you know what? That's okay. Yeah. So it's normalising that being uncomfortable, being a little bit stressed, being a little bit anxious about certain situations in life, specifically when you're working with, you know, you're talking or trying to communicate, is normal. Like that is normal. Yeah. So I think that's one of the biggest gifts we can give the students and the PTs and just, you know, the next generation of people in our industry, really. So
refreshing that there's educators like yourself who have this mantra as well. The image I've got etched in my mind now. Oh, can you remember the old image of you had the circle, and the circle represented your comfort zone.
Yes,
and then the extended circle beyond it, which is like where the magic happens or where you learn.
Absolutely.
But you have to step out of that initial circle to go and explore and learn the lessons and have that, you know, positive feedback cycle.
When was the last time you heard that talked about in schools?
Never.
Like, and we've got young children who are school age, never hear about it. Yeah. And I think there's too much of, but we can't upset Johnny, we can't upset, you know, little Bob, you know, whatever it is. I don't know why Bob's playing such a part today. Obviously, you know, Bob's obviously, you know, my
poor
mind.
Bob.
Poor
yeah,
Bob,
I know. Bob. Yeah, all Bob's been tarnished with the same brush.
What child is called Bob these days? But yeah, there is that element of, and I think one of the things that I've often said to, you know, when I specifically, you know, as you know, I work a lot in the women's space and women's health and fitness. And a lot of women will say to me, especially sort of, you know, mums on the school run and friends of mine, also, I could never do what you do. Like, oh, it's too hardcore. Like, I said, but part of me's not doing it for me. Part of me's doing it so that my little girl who's 8 years old sees me do it, but also sees me fail and sees me struggle and sees me hurting. But, and there's a big but there, she sees me struggle, she sees me hurting, but then she sees me get back up and smile and be like, wow, that was tough, but I loved it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, and it kind of gets me a little bit actually, like here, it gets me because that, you know, women listening to this, like, and you know, it is hard. Yeah. It is hard. It is scary. You know, I've been in this industry and been in fitness for 30 odd years. I still get scared walking into a gym, especially if I don't know the people or it's unusual to me. Of course I get scared, but that's the point. That's the point. It's challenging yourself. What's it? I can't even remember the famous, I mean, you know what I'm like with movie stars. I mean, what were we talking about earlier on? I think, you know, it's that thing of what is it? Do something every day that scares you. I can't remember who said that.
Oh, okay.
You know, there's a thing, isn't there? Do
like
something every day that scares you.
Yeah.
When was the last time you did something that scared you? I did on Sunday, actually. We were on the mountain bikes and I was like at the top of this hill and Mila had gone down, my daughter, and then my son had gone down and my husband had gone down. I'm like, I got no choice now.
Yeah.
And there was that feeling of, oh my God, I've committed. But yeah, do something every day that scares you, but not for you, for you, but also
Absolutely.
for the people that are watching
do it.
you.
Yeah. And you know, I've done like, I've been through lots of phases, you know, with like health and fitness as well, exploring, you know, your limits and you know, things like cold therapy and you know, well, let's take that as an example. I think the benefits to me were not physiological, they were psychological. The ability to get out of bed and jump straight into a freezing cold plunge pool. It takes something.
How amazing does it feel afterwards?
You feel like incredible.
You feel like you can run through a wall, right?
100%, yeah. But like putting yourself in that uncomfortable position, it kind of grounds you for the day.
Yeah.
Like nothing is going to get in your way that day. You can guarantee it.
I guess like how do you package that? And I think it's like things like this, discussions like this, and just being there as a PT to remind. I think the biggest thing for me is normalise menopause, normalise struggle, normalise the menstrual cycle, like just normalise those things. Normalise those conversations. You know, we all have it. We've all got the same bits. Like they all work in a similar way. You know, normalise having those conversations, but normalise that hard is not bad. You know, uncomfortable is not bad. Absolutely. It's actually really good for you.
And that's a level of comfort as well, particularly from a male trainer. So from a male training perspective, you know, a lot of trainers would be curling their toes. But why? Why? You know, why can't we talk about that openly as a female world? So I think we'll explore that today.
Yeah,
I think you're going to give us some good tips on that, Ath. And the fitness side of it. So you've got this business operating a CrossFit box in your local town or close to your local town with your husband Rob.
Lovely Barbados.
Barbados indeed. Where did that come about? How did that fit into the career journey?
So I met Rob in the back end of 2012. He was, crikey. The guy just oozes passion for health and fitness. And he's super fit as well, isn't he? He is a walking billboard for fitness. Well, wasn't it the first thing you said to him was, oh, hey, mate, God, your arms, or, you know, you work out.
I said,
or something,
you're in
Nick.
Yeah, because he is. And, you know, I always go out my way to compliment people because it takes graft and effort.
Absolutely. Well, what would you say yesterday? A good body or a fit body at 40 is much more of a sort of statement, isn't it, than a wealth statement than any fast car or, you know, because you have to build that. Nobody can do it for you. So the gym, back end of 2012, I met Rob at a CrossFit gym, actually. We were both at CrossFit in Nottingham. I just found it because I was looking for something different, retired from rowing, and I was just looking for a different challenge. And at the time, there was about 80 CrossFit gyms, I think, in the UK. It was very, very in its infancy. And it was just batshit crazy. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is insane. You know, 1 minute we're trying to climb a rope, and the next minute then we're throwing these med balls at the wall and trying not to hit ourselves in the face. And then the next minute we're trying to skip, and then we're upside down. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't done a handstand since I was like 8. Yeah. So, and then you've got people who are, you know, Bob, no, not Bob. You've got people over here who are, you know, 22 doing this absolute, you know, walking on their hands, which at the time I thought was insane and I'd never be able to do it. And then the other side of the room, you've got a grandma who's, in her 60s doing the same sort of stuff. Obviously, she's not walking on her hands, but although some of them can. But she's doing like shoulder stability work to develop the same intensity, the same stimulus of shoulder stability and working on all of that sort of strength element. And I just thought, man, this is insane. But this is also the methodology here is crazy. And whatever you think of CrossFit, like, I'm not going to sit here and go, it's for everybody. I'm not going to sit here and go, it's the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah. But for me, as an academic and somebody who's spent such a long time researching and, understanding fitness, the methodology around, high intensity training across broad time and modal domains, which is their definition. When you look at the methodology, it fits everybody. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that gets in people's way with training CrossFit is ego. If you can lose your ego and you just come in and you move and you listen to the coaches and you do the movements, it is the best type of training. Functional fitness. Yeah. And I'll say that because, well, as you know, you're having a breast cancer diagnosis a couple of years ago, 3 days later I was back doing something. Yeah. I would never have done that if I hadn't have been, the CrossFit background, But yeah, back to my going off on a tangent. We knew we'd do this, didn't we?
Expect nothing less.
Yeah,
but we'll come back to that point because
4 hours later, if you're still listening, you're doing really well. But yeah, the gym. So I found CrossFit, I found Rob, and he was... I like to say the Barbie story because that's quite funny, isn't it? So I walked in as an ex-row. I'd just come back off holiday. And apparently, I don't think this is true, my husband will laugh at this. Apparently, I walked in a GB onesie, like rowers wear these lycra, think weightlifting, but not quite as tight, you know? And apparently, I walked in one of them, which I think is absolute BS, but anyway. And I had bright blonde hair, like platinum blonde hair, dark tan because, I just come off holiday. And he was up on the balcony, said, she's either going to be really good or really shit. And it was squatting and being 5'10", long limbs. I squatted like an absolute broken deck chair. So it quickly went sour. Yeah. But I had an amazing engine from the rowing. So he was like, oh, okay. And yeah, we hit it off.
Like-minded.
Exactly, like-minded. And obviously you've met Rob. He is, as I say, he oozes health, fitness, and he's very much like me. We take a lot on because I think if you were to say what's our mantra, it's helping people realise their true potential or their human potential. Yeah. And I think what we mean by that is if somebody walks into our gym, because we've been accused before of being competitive. We are competitive, but I'm competitive UVU. So you come into my gym, I want you to be a better version of yourself. Yeah. I don't care if you're a better version than everybody else, but I want you to be better. Yeah. So he just, amplifies that and everything about it. So when I first met him, he had these aspirations to open a gym. He was working in the fitness industry. Yep. He'd done the classic journey of, go to university, get a degree, and then obviously get into the PT world. Done the exercise referral, worked in, council gyms. But then what happens is the good trainers, guess what? They get put into management. Yeah. And then they get further and further away from the ground. And the further you are from the ground, the further you are away from helping people. And the more you're just forced into sales and, retention. And to be honest with you, most of the Globo gyms, even in council gyms, it's, get 50 new memberships a month, but lose 40. That's not the model I work with. And that's not the model I certainly, have ever been. I want 50 members and I want to keep 49 of them, and then that one member that's gone, I'm like, well, what can we do anything? Is there anything that we can do to support you? Is it, so I was very much behind his ethos and he was so passionate about it. He'd always wanted to open a CrossFit box because he'd started training CrossFit. Then he was at CrossFit Nottingham, again, loved the methodology, had an investor who was a friend of his, but he just wasn't around as much and it sort of was dragging a little bit. And, I was very fortunate. I'm a very simple person. I'm not into flashy cars. Look at the state of my nails. I've actually, I've straightened my hair today, which is a real treat. I know you'd be jealous.
Well done.
Which doesn't happen very often. So yeah, I'm not particularly into like all the flashy stuff. So I'd been very fortunate. I'd worked in football. I'd got, I'd sort of done my PhD at this point, had a bit of cash hanging around. So I thought, well, this guy isn't the only person that can invest in you. Like And at this point, we just sort of started getting, into the dating scene. Can you say that, dating scene? Was that a thing? Is it still a thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Whatever the kids say these days. So we hit it off, and then we started this whole dating thing, and I said, look, I know we've obviously started this, and it might not be ideal, but this chap is not the only person that will invest in you. I've got this cash. How much do you need? We sat down. He did a business proposal, and you know what? When you just a bit like when we first met, you just have a feeling for people that are on your wavelength. They share the same values. And I knew he was never going to let it fail. I just knew. It chokes me up a little bit as well.
Well, it's a brilliant story, and you've collided.
Oh, you got a tear in your eye there.
You've collided through a passion, a shared passion for health and fitness. I think CrossFit has really been the catalyst for lots of entrepreneur. Real kind of flair over the years as well, and it's really got people to look at their careers and look at whether that's going to serve them for the rest of their career pathway, or can they step out and go down a health and fitness journey. And the independent kind of gym operators up and down the country, it's normally born out of a passion that's in there that they've developed through sport, exercise, a personal health journey. And it's so inspiring. It's fantastic. And to do it with your partner is incredible. So fair play.
Is. And it's nice actually, because a lot of people say to us, we compete together as well. So we've just done the CrossFit quarterfinals. And to be able to share the WOD floor with him, a lot of people always say, like, how on earth do you do that and not fall out? But we are I think we've always been, we're very passionate people, we're very alpha, we're very independent on our own. But together it is that kind of cliche. Don't get me wrong, he does my head in a lot of the time. But, it's that cliche of we are such a good team together. He's very good at things that I'm not, and vice versa. But when all said and done, you're completely right. Like he and a lot of other, there's bad trainers all over the place, but, he and a lot of the others have this just need to help people. You don't open a CrossFit box to make money. You open it because you want a quality of life and satisfaction that when you go home, because sometimes, you are the plumber, you are the carpenter, you are the accountant, you are the flipping, and the stuff we've learned as people. Interestingly, he said something to me the other day. He said, I genuinely don't think there is a job that I couldn't do or learn, because it's the way in which you don't employ somebody nowadays on their skill and knowledge. You employ them on their attitude, because most of the time you can teach them the skills and the education. So the CrossFit box came about, and then, as we were talking about yesterday, within a year of opening, almost within a year of getting together, we had a son, we had the gym, and we had a dog, and we'd moved house. So we did things very rapidly. But I'm trying to think how long it's, we're 20, so but 14 years on, we're still as strong as ever, and we've been through a lot. And I think that's, I wouldn't want to do it with anybody else.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's a fantastic story, and people take a lot of kind of benefit from that as well. After that journey is absolutely incredible.
I think the big thing to say is just do it.
Yeah.
If you're in a job you don't like, just entrepreneurism is not, I'm not going to say it's easy, but we're just everyday people. Nothing special about who we are. We didn't have all the answers. In fact, we had very few answers when we started out. But you know what? We just, if you have the passion, just you'll find a way.
Absolutely.
Build it and they will come, and they will.
And so many people have sat in that podcast chair and said exactly the same. Just rip the plaster off and do it.
Do it.
And there's actually examples all across your journey there of participating in the CrossFit, putting yourself outside your comfort zone, taking the risk, in terms of launching the gym. There's going to be more. There's going to be more, because you have that personality and you have that belief in your own ability. And I think,
not for you though, because wasn't your risk 1 out of 10?
Yeah, my risk. My risk factor.
Your risk factor.
That's from an investment perspective. Yeah, my risk factor is like 0. It's off the chart. They've never seen such a low risk factor.
But yeah, you're right. There is that just do it. And I think on that note, a little bit of tip number 1. There's a really great book. There's thousands of books on this, but there's a really good book called Tim Furness, Tribe of Mentors, and he basically interviews or asks 100 different successful people across all sorts, so investors, athletes, entrepreneurs. You ask them the same questions, and it's really easy to read. What was your best spend of $100? What was your biggest loss? What was your something that you failed at, that you learned your biggest lesson? And I would recommend anybody that's sat there, edging the plaster off. Great book to read, easy read. And that, I think that gives, because they're all saying the same thing. Just rip the plaster off. If you're not happy,
it's not rocket science.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll find a way.
There'll be commonality across it. We'll grab that link off you and we'll pop it in the description of this. But that's amazing. If we can dovetail slightly.
Yes.
I want to talk now about training and the female body specifically as well. So what we should be considering as fitness professionals. Let's start with program design. So why should a program design differ from a female client than a male client? Let's keep it really basic to start things off.
Well, I guess the biggest thing is hormones.
Yeah.
Simply,
Okay.
We obviously have different bits, and that's pretty obvious from the outside looking in. But I think the biggest thing is hormones. And what's interesting, and certainly something that I guess I always knew it existed, but it wasn't really until the last couple of years I started to, I guess if we backtrack slightly, in academia, you're in a environment where it's very insular. Mm-hmm. And I've been very lucky that I have one foot out of that door, out of that room. And so I see things that go on. And I'd find sometimes when I was talking to some of my colleagues that they'd be saying things and I'd be going, I don't agree with that. But the research says it's right. So I would just kind of sit there and I go, well, the research says it's right. Of course it's right. Empirical led, right? It must be right. Mm-hmm. And then you start to get this, I don't know, there's always been this uneasiness of, I don't fit in this world, Yeah. And I guess I would just took a long time to admit it to myself. And what that was very much centered around, just because it's research doesn't mean it's necessarily always right.
Yeah.
Because when we look at a lot of research and, peer-reviewed research, yeah, absolutely. It's been done very stringently. It's been, validated, they've done all the necessary tests and ethics and all the rest of it. But it doesn't mean that it's generic to the population. And what we find specifically with female-related research or female program or training or whatever is very, very little of the work that we have based things like the level 3 PT or the advanced personal trainer. We're not allowed to say level 3 anymore. But the advanced personal trainer and all of this sort of education that traditionally we put out there for trainers is based on the research. But the research has predominantly been on male participants.
Okay.
It's looking at, a population of men and hypertrophy and strength training. And so we've got years and years and years of research. And we all know that, how and when it gets on the ground usually takes a period of time.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at, those PT courses, I mean, you remember doing your PT course, when were periods, when was a menstrual cycle mentioned?
No mention of it.
When do we ever mention things like postpartum? Mm. Well, if 70 to 80% of female clients that come to you have had a child, just because it wasn't a year ago, it might have been 10 years ago, 20 years ago, doesn't mean they're no longer postnatal. Doesn't mean or postpartum. They've still got some potential core or abdominal weakness that's possibly, and certainly like if they're, of the sort of older generation, that would have never been thought about back then. So there's loads of things where you just think, there's something in that. Yeah. So I think for me, the last couple of years, I've started to look a lot more at, what is out there on training in women? And when you look at things, it generally falls into one of two categories. It's either it's just men because hormones are noisy.
Yeah.
And I can say this as an academic, we don't like research with women because we like things to be linear. We like things to be controlled. We like to be in a lab. I don't, but academics like to be in a lab. They like to control things.
Even
the temperature in the lab, when you're doing certain testing. So we like those controls, and rightly so for some things that needs to be the case.
Yeah.
But what we have to realise as academics is that's not reality.
Yeah.
That's not reality. We can use that research to filter, but it shouldn't be used as gospel.
Yeah.
So what I started to do is look at, well, where is the research on females? And you know what? It's scarce. It really is. There's, we start to find with performance related, so when you look at things like red S and energy, deficiency, and you start to look at, there is a little bit more now on training during pregnancy and, postnatal. But in terms of things actually relating to the general population and training, few and far between. And certainly when you look at things like perimenopause and postmenopause training, the research is very, very limited.
Yeah.
So ultimately what we find is the training mechanisms we use as PTs for women are based on men. So when women struggle, we put it down to, it's a lack of motivation, or they're just being women, they're just being fickle, or whatever it may be. And it's not, they're frustrated because they're not seeing the progression that linear programs
it's not
are put out because not tailored to them, or it's not, we've not normalized variability, we've not normalized inconsistency, which is ironic because what do we say all the time? Well, consistency over perfection. Yeah. But actually a little bit of inconsistency is normal when we're looking at the menstrual cycle, when we're looking at hormone disruption, when we're looking at, sort of perimenopause, postmenopause.
Absolutely. It makes so much, this is stacking up so much as well because recently you've presented at our Level Up session.
Yeah,
and there was
which is awesome.
It was amazing, and the feedback was incredible for your session. And there's a big, bold statement in there of the fitness industry is not built for women. Yeah. And I looked at that in the slides prior, being completely honest, prior to Level Up, I looked at the slides, it was like, ooh, that's a big statement. And I thought, is this going to be like a man bashing exercise? And then we talked through the slides and we rationalized everything. And I was like, this is crystal clear. And I completely get where the statement is coming from because it's not linear. You do have to have these variables, and there's a big population there that we're not even factoring into these considerations.
Exactly, and I think that's exactly right. And I will be the first one to say, look, it isn't a man bashing at all. It's not anything. As a male PT, as a female PT, it's not your fault. Yeah. Like, how can you possibly? And I say this because I'm sat here. I don't train to my cycle. I understand when, I come in and I've got maybe a squat cycle to do, and I'll think, and I don't say, it's a bit like when you've got your whoop on, haven't you? It's like a bit like when you look at your whoop and you go, my heart rate variability is really low today, I'm not going to train. But actually, you might feel pretty good, psychologically. So why would you not go and train? So it's useful to have the data, but the data is there just as information. It's not there as a computer says no. Yeah. And I think this is the same with training around the menstrual cycle. And, we're hopefully going to do a little mini education on this for anyone that's sort of interested in this specifically, or works with a lot of women who wants to know more about what you can or what you should or how you should look at it. But what it is it's looking at the information that's available to you. So at different points during the month, during the cycle, rather than just saying, you're on your period or you're not, there are different hormonal shifts. And during those hormonal shifts, women will have increases and decreases in strength, in motivation, in fatigue. And it's just, as a PT, understanding that so that, if your client comes in and just goes, God, I'm just feeling like really flumpy today. I'm just not feeling it. And, rather than the PT pushing them through the session they've got planned, they'll just go, okay, well, don't worry. What we're going to do today, we're just going to go on RPE, right? Yeah. But also giving them the confidence that if you are doing that session at 70%, that's the intended stimulus. Yeah. So if 1 week and, you sort of estrogen is low and you're feeling a bit crappy, if that week you do your strength cycle at 60 kilos and it feels 7 out of 10, and then the next week you're feeling great and you do it at 70 kilos and it's still a 7 out of 10. The intended stimulus on both of those workouts is exactly the same. Yeah. But the 10 kilo difference. And it's normalizing that variability as okay. You haven't increased 10 kilos. And similarly, if it was the other way around, you haven't decreased strength by 10 kilos.
Yeah.
It's a hormonal fluctuation. And that's normal. It's not
it
you
what it is.
losing
Yeah.
motivation or
Yeah.
losing strength. But it is a struggle. Like I still find it a struggle, you know, because I'm like, oh God, I'm really crap today. Like I'm not able to hit my numbers. And I just have to have a word with myself and check myself. But then my coach will go, or my husband, because he tends to, you know, to write the program, he'll go, just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You know, you're 46 years old. You know, you're in the gym doing something, like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and class, it'll go, he says, we've played this dance before, you know, like next week you'll be smashing it again. Like, and he says something, you know, like that to me, and I go, yeah, true.
And that's answered a lot of questions, because that was the broad
sorry.
question there around how should a personal trainer program around hormonal cycles. What I got from that, Ath, is let's not overcomplicate it.
No.
Let's get in the gym, let's do something, because something's better than nothing, but also an RP, rate of perceived exertion chart might be sufficient.
Absolutely.
Just to get through those sessions. And just having that open dialogue, I think, is the key, though, isn't it? Between coach and client. Yeah?
Again, what does it come down to? Communication, soft skills, being able to, you know, have a trust in your client. And I think one thing I would add to that is there's been a number of times where, you know, in my own experience, my client's experience, you know, I wear a Garmin, I've got my heart rate monitor on. As in, I don't wear those fancy, I just use my wrist. I mean, that's good enough for me. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm out of breath and I'm just warming up. You know, I'm on the C2 bike and I'm, you know, and I think, oh God, and what it feels like is it just feels like I'm more fatigued and laboured than I should be.
Yeah.
And I look down on my heart rate and I'm like, oh, it's 110. I feel like it's 150. Yeah. And it's those points where you go, that's hormonal. Yeah. That's hormonal. Yeah. That's all it is. So do not worry about that. Just crack on, do the session. Yes, it may feel a little bit laboured. You're not losing fitness. You're not suddenly gonna, you know, kind of lose everything that you've put money in the bank with regards to your health and fitness. It is literally women have a monthly hormonal fluctuation, men have a daily fluctuation. Because we could say the same for men. Like their hormones generally fluctuate in 24 hours. Yeah. So as a guy, sometimes you'll find training in the morning is better, sometimes training in the evening is better. Yes, it's easier because it's daily. Women, we have a week or, you know, 8 days where we might struggle. Yeah. But it's still the same. You know, don't underestimate hormones. Yeah. Cortisol is another whole area, but you know, don't underestimate hormones. Yeah. Don't like, you know, be so rigid around them, but just be aware of them. Yeah. As simple as that.
Absolutely. And I guess when we look at training stimulus and like load on the body, things of that nature, or you know, different variables of training, is there any research or any suggestions you can make to a personal trainer in terms of what considerations they might take for a client who is maybe going through the menopause or perimenopausal? What are the considerations just broadly around what we should be thinking about as coaches when we got a client in that?
I mean, I think the biggest one is, and it sort of pains me to say it, that I fear that we're going back into a skinny is the look with the whole GLP thing. Okay. And it does worry me a little bit because especially, you know, you've got to remember, and I saw some brilliant quotes, you know, about, I think it was a 45-year-old woman and she was training and she said, I'm not training to look 25. I'm training so a 25-year-old looks at me and is not scared.
Nice.
And that hit me. That hit me because I was like, oh my God, yes. Yeah. That is why I train like I do. And why do I train like I do? Why do I encourage and why do I absolutely advocate for strength training and load as you get older and as you approach perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause? Because strength training and having muscle is your absolute protection against so many metabolic diseases. Yeah. You know, you think about osteoporosis, you think about, you know, sarcopenia, like loss of muscle, all of those things, cardiovascular disease. Mm-hmm. Having muscle metabolically is your protection against so much. So what we've traditionally had is this classic, I can't lift heavy because I'm going to get bulky.
Yes.
Oh my God. If you look at my Instagram, working athlete mum, I have been trying to get bulky for the last 20 years. I mean, Jesus. And I lift, a quick fix, oh my God, I lift heavy, I eat. It's not something you just click your fingers and it happens. I would love to look at a deadlift and suddenly put on 5 kilos of muscle. It doesn't happen like that. But what we have to understand is that if somebody is approaching that age, and it can be as early as mid-30s, and even earlier than that, it's very rare. But as women sort of approach their late 30s and certainly into their 40s and 50s, etc., they need to lift. They need to get under load. And I'm not talking about 2 kilo dumbbells.
Yeah.
I'm talking about appropriately safe load, but something that is going to challenge them, something that is going to remodel bone. Yeah. Because we used to think that once you started to, so as you start losing estrogen, what essentially happens is, your body, without going too technical, your bone starts absorbing more than it's creating, because your bone is constantly remodeling. Yeah. And so as that happens, as you get older, obviously, if you're not loading, we used to think that once that happened, it was irreversible. Yeah. But what we've actually found is that, having more skeletal muscle mass, loading the bone can actually stimulate remodeling. Yeah. So it can stimulate the osteoblasts that effectively create bone. So what we found in research is that loading as you get older actually is a massive, massive protection against osteoporosis. Yeah. And you think that, at the moment, I think the statistics are something crazy, like 50% of women over 50 are at risk of fracture just from falling. And you don't actually know that you've got issues until there's a fracture. Yeah. Whereas you think of, I know it's a bit extreme, but one of the ladies who trains with me, Jill, she's absolute batshit crazy, but she's 61 and she's doing handstand push-ups, and she sort of like does this with her wrist. My wrists are a little bit sore, but she's loading her body through her entire body weight through her hands. And wrists, as we know, are one of the biggest, because as you fall, you put your hand down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're working with these clients, get them to lift weights. And what's really interesting is women think to look good naked, they've just got to do cardio. Like, I do loads of fitness. I walk 10,000 steps a day. Yeah. You're not loading the body when you're doing that. Yeah. Yeah, don't get me wrong. That's good, right? But you're not loading the body. Yeah. So that is the biggest thing for women of that age group.
And you're talking about whole total body composition there and understanding the rationale behind that. I've had a first-hand example, actually, of my mum going through that situation, breaking her arm a few years back, and then subsequently having kind of the T-tests, so, your bone mineral density.
Right, okay.
Being in that, drifting into osteopenia, so the onset of osteoporosis, and just not letting it get the better of her.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she refused to have osteoporosis.
I love that. I'm just refusing to have that.
It was literally, that was the conversation she had with herself. She was like, I'm not having osteoporosis. So subsequently, took up Pilates, started lifting, started doing all that sort of stuff again, putting the load into the body. Yeah. Guess what's happened? Absolutely normal bone mineral density.
That's
So
insane.
it works. It absolutely works. And it's good to identify actually when the key times are. I suppose there isn't really a key time. This is evergreen, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You can lift.
And it's the same with guys. And you should be lifting. You should be lifting load 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah. And when, and we're not sort of, I'm not, when I say get under load, what we're saying is for adaptation, for remodeling, for sort of muscle health, we're not talking about, 1 RMs every week. What we're talking about is, load that is going to challenge the musculoskeletal and the sort of bone system. Yeah. And I think that's where we need to sort of, as PTs, we need to be confident understanding this, but we also need to not be afraid. Yeah. I mean, my mother, like we said about yours, my mum is 70, what has she got now? 73. She started CrossFit about 4 years ago and she loves it. But the thing is that it is going to be hard. Again, goes back to that thing of you are going to have aches and pains. Yeah. It's going to be hard. There are going to be things that, your knee might, and I mean, a classic example is a lot of women come to me and they go, oh, the doctor says I can't squat. And the first thing I say to them is, well, can you just sit down on that box for me and stand up?
Yeah.
Okay, just do that 3 more times for me. And then they do it and they look at you like you're a little bit weird. And I say, well, you've just done 4 squats. And they'll go, they're not squats. Well, why are they not squats?
Yeah.
If I give you a goblet squat, as in a goblet kettlebell, and you do the same, all I've done is I've loaded. What the doctor's probably saying is, as we all know, GPs aren't necessarily as experienced as they should be or as knowledgeable as they should be about lifestyle medicine.
Yeah.
They are programmed to give drug and prescribe drug rather than holistic, right? For a lot of them, not all, but for the majority, because it's the easier option, the time they have. I'm not, dissing them at all. That's just the way it is. The system is. The system is broken. But ultimately, you're still squatting, like you're squatting. So what we're effectively doing is we're saying, okay, if you've got knee issues and it may even be arthritic knees, like my mum has no cartilage in her knees at all. But what I've told her is, well, the only way you're going to reduce the pain and the inflammation in that knee is build the muscle around it. Well, the only way you're going to build the muscle around it is by working the muscles around it.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to do that. So lo and behold, what's happened is the knee joint hasn't suddenly recovered, but what has happened is all the muscles around that joint have got stronger. Yeah. So guess what? She's in less pain.
Win-win.
Win-win.
Yeah, there's so many benefits. And I would love, in my heart of hearts, hope that one day there will be a true relationship between our industry and the NHS, supporting each other, thinking of exercise and fitness as medication. That is like that's in my heart of hearts somewhere. But the reality is, it's quite murky water, isn't it? And we've got a lot of work to do, I think, to bridge that gap.
Exactly. But I mean, we wrote a paper a couple of years ago, and 2,000 people surveyed, 300 came back saying they took some sort of medication. It was CrossFit related, sorry. But of those 300 people, nearly 2/3 either had eradicated all medication or decreased it by over half within 6 months. Yeah. I mean, is that not something that, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport would not look at and go, but they're just not interested. Not interested, which is sad. But all we can do as a collective group is keep banging the drum, banging the drum, because there are people out there that do want it.
And there'll be personal trainers living with this challenge day in, day out as well. But to every personal trainer, keep going, because you are doing the right thing. You are following the right journey.
You'll jump in your grave happy and satisfied. And I think that's all we can do.
100%. I had chronic disease and prevention on my list. However, and I hope you don't mind me asking this, Ath, so I'm going to change it slightly and just talk a little bit about your own personal kind of health situations over the last few years as well. So
my dice with a big C.
Yeah.
Dance with a big C.
Let's look at it. So when did you think the possibility of cancer was on your radar? And then how did you react and deal with it in the initial term?
Well, that's a good question. It's a weird one because I just had this niggling feeling.
Okay.
It was odd because I'd found a lump probably about 18 months, 2 years before I had actually kind of gone and had, before the sort of diagnosis. And without, again, I don't want to sort of diss the NHS. They do a great job for emergency care. But when I'd gone to get it checked out, they would, it's nothing to worry about. I'm not exactly, you wouldn't even know. Boobs are underrated in our industry, aren't they? And I kind of had sort of dismissed it then. I thought, well, okay, they said it's fine. Nothing to worry about. Fortunately, we have private medical insurance, Vitality, and there was, a sort of second lump that felt very much like, it was about the size of a 50 pence, because people often ask, what does it feel like? Yeah. And it felt like, if you've got children and they have those squished balls, which have got lots of little balls inside them.
Modules inside.
It felt like that.
Right, okay.
Right? It felt like that. And I thought, and it was just this niggling feeling. And this is probably the biggest thing I will say is, trust your gut. Yeah. Trust your gut. Like, if you aren't sure, just go. Like, just go, get an appointment. People people like us feel that we're a burden when we go to the GP. But the GPs actually love people like us because we'll go with exactly what we think's wrong. We're fit, we're healthy, we do everything right. And ultimately, we are not a burden, absolutely. So do not ever think that. But if you have that niggling feeling, then you just got to go, just got to get in there. So I actually had a consult with my private, with Vitality. They do it online.
Yeah.
And the woman had said, whatever comes first, I'm going to refer you NHS, I'm going to refer you Vitality, whichever one comes first, you go to.
Okay.
And lo and behold, they arrived on the same day.
Today.
So I just thought, would you know what? I'm going to go with Vitality. I've done the NHS. I'm going to go Vitality because that, it was a quicker way of getting through. So I went in and I saw she was a little Indian lady, Amtul Carmichael, married an Irish man, which is hilarious. So she's this little Indian lady and she's lovely. Happened to, ironically, have written papers, academic papers on breast cancer with somebody that I've written papers with, which was really weird. So we struck up a lovely relationship and I actually think it was her thoroughness that got me through as quickly and as, what do we say, painlessly, because they did a mammogram, she goes, I don't think it's anything to worry about, exactly like the NHS had done. But she said, I'm a thorough woman. I'd really like to do a biopsy. Yeah. And she says, if you want to. And I said, well, look, you're the doctor sat there, you're the prof, you know, whatever you think. So we went and had a biopsy. And then I got a phone call. Oh, excuse me. And they said, can you come in? And I thought, I know straight away. And I kind of had this anxiety feeling because I kind of knew. And then when they told me those words of you have cancer, I said, okay, well, my first question was, okay, so what are we dealing with then? In fact, no, she had said, okay, so, it's, you have cancer. And before I said anything, she said, but it's stage 1, it's slow growing and it's hormone receptive, whatever it is. Yeah. And so I said, so, okay, what we're dealing with here? And she says, well, she repeated what she said. And I think my words were, I said, well, that's good, isn't it then? I said, so ultimately what you're telling me is that it's really slow going, it's treatable. Yeah. And if you're going to get breast cancer, is the best one to get. I think those are my exact words. And the Macmillan nurse sort of smiled and I said, it's true, innit? And then she laughed.
I love that.
So I think for me, it was fight or flight. Okay, right. The facts are in front of us. If that's what we've got to deal with, that's what we've got to deal with. Yeah. And she was sort of, oh, do you want to go away and process it? Because I'd come on my own. And I said, well, no, just tell me what the options are, And what's weird is women don't take the medical option a lot of the time. Yeah. I find that odd. If a doctor's saying to you, do X in terms of, and what I mean by that is, let me clarify that because that could come out completely wrong. They said, well, we could do a lumpectomy. However, it looks like there are potential multiple areas. Yeah. And obviously, as I say, I've not got a lot up there. So there's not a lot to really save anyway. I can imagine it's different if you had, slightly bigger boobs. Yeah. So she sort of said, well, look, the option is we, go with a full mastectomy if you're happy with that. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, just get rid of it. Yeah. Not even a thought to it really. Yeah. And in terms of the sort of how there was a couple of days where I was like, shit, this is not cool. It was almost like this is more of an inconvenience.
Yeah, and I suppose the reality sets in, doesn't it? Yeah. And also it probably just confirms what you suspected in your mind as well. So just knowing that is actually reality now. That's what you're dealing with. Yes, it is inconvenient, and yes, you are going to have to do some stuff to overcome this. But the fact that you instantly kind of move to
what do we do?
Let's put our first step on the ladder. Then that's so admirable, and it's totally you. Have to be fair.
Well, I think as well. What can you do?
Yeah, exactly. What
can I do? I can't change a circumstance, and I think this is the whole thing around the victim mentality. You can't. You've got two choices. Yeah. I've got a good friend of mine. He's a congenital double amputee. Yeah. What does he do? He goes and wins 2 Paralympic gold medals. Yeah. He could have sat at home and gone, nah, I'm going to sit here and wallow because I've got no legs. Yeah. Or he's an absolute legend, hilarious. And he just goes, no, I'm going to make the best of what I've got. And I think that's it. I would say that one of the things that was the hardest actually was So I'm there going, I'm an advocate for health and fitness as preventative for cancer in women, and I'm doing everything right.
Yeah.
And then I still get the bugger.
Yeah.
That for me was the hardest thing.
Yeah.
And at first I found that very, very hard to deal with, because I thought, how can I then go back to being an advocate for this, having it almost like it's not worked for me, you know?
Yeah.
But I think what I changed my mindset to was, certainly after the surgery, was, well, if I didn't and I wasn't as fit and as healthy and as resilient as I am,
yes,
I wouldn't have been back in the gym 3 days later, and I would have been back competing at Marbella 9 weeks later, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's how you've got to look at it, you know?
It's a sad reality with cancer these days as well, isn't it? It's probably 50% of people are going to have some sort of cancer now.
It's not a case of if, it's a case of when for most of us. And ultimately, as crazy as it sounds, having a cancer at a relatively young age with relatively minor intervention having to be done, and having a cancer that's probably one of the most researched cancers out there, it's kind of a win-win, really. Most of us will either die with or of cancer. But I think the reality is that hopefully nowadays cancer is very treatable in a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they're making massive inroads, but also what you said earlier about getting yourself in peak physical condition. So if you are ever dealt that card, you can deal with it, you can navigate it, and there's a strong possibility that you're going to absolutely fly through it. So, you know, and no medical journey is the same.
Absolutely.
Everyone's built differently. But I think the lessons there is firstly the attitude you show towards it. You know, this is not great news, but I'm bigger than this, and I'm going to.
I am not going to let this. I mean,
100%.
It's interesting because if you go back to Facebook when I announced it, and do you know how I announced it? You're going to love this. So we were actually at a competition in Cumbria, in the Lakes, District L.
Yeah.
And I, unbeknown to all of the girls I asked, I said, I want to do a post where we all are standing with the lake and the mountains in the background with our boobs out, just covering our boobs like this. So all of the girls, being CrossFitters, they were like, all right, let's do it. Like, didn't even ask, right?
Yeah.
And then so there's about, 10 of us, 10 girls, and we were all like this.
Yeah.
And that's how I announced it. And I basically was like, and it was a big sort of awareness, check your boobs, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You can look at it on the Instagram on Working Athlete Mum, but it was a post where I was like, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I am going to use my voice. Because if you noticed, I have got one and it's a lot loud. I'm going to use my voice, and I'm going to make sure that it's a way of getting women to not be scared of if they have this underlying, I'm not sure, just check your boobs and you know and get out there. And I think, you know, for a lot of us, you know, when it comes to, and I mean just going back to that whole resilience thing, you know, there's a model which looks at illness, wellness, fitness. It's called the illness wellness continuum. And ultimately, if you're here on that continuum and the fitness, take COVID for example. Like, most of us had COVID. We're fit. We get COVID. Guess what? We were a little bit unwell. We probably can't train as hard as we want to, but we still did everything. We still didn't go to work as the case may be, but we still were able to do activities of daily life. Nothing changed, right? We were well. Yeah. But if you're here and you get COVID, well, you get towards the sick. So ultimately what happens is you may spend a day in bed, you may have to like take a couple of days off work or whatever. But if you get COVID and you're already here, guess where you're ending? And I think that really simplifies the closer you can swing that pendulum over to the fitness side. When something gets you, cancer, you know, COVID, you know, whatever it may be, you know, man flu. I mean, man flu, obviously everybody just goes straight
absolutely goes without saying.
But ultimately, the you know, the less you move over you swing the pendulum. And I think it's a great analogy to use, really.
It is.
And that's what we're trying to do with all of our clients, is we're trying to swing them them as far as we can over onto that fitness side.
Absolutely.
So that when shit does happen, not necessarily even physical or illness, it might just be stress. It might be caring for a sick parent. It could be anything, you know.
That analogy works perfectly well, especially in a day and age when everyone's talking about longevity now and things like that as well. It's on the mind of everyone, and it's a priority for everyone. And I do believe, you know, the health of the nation is going to improve because people are taking fitness more serious than ever before. I genuinely think there's been a change in society over the last few years, and we are going, you know, into that positive direction. And maybe it's the romantic side of me again, but it's all good. It's all good. We've this is probably the longest podcast I've done. I'm not surprised. But what you've shared today, thank you for
you're
everything.
Very welcome. It's been amazing.
You're so giving with your time and your energy, and nothing is off the table with you as well. And I love that about you.
A bit of an open book, yeah.
Yeah, and to give you exposure to our PT network, I think is so powerful for us, because this is a gap that we need to connect the dots on. And I think you are the perfect person to deliver that. And we're going to spend some time doing some education. That's going to be available on the Your PT Hub in a few weeks' time. But as a rule on the podcast, we always leave the last word to the guest.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh.
We do.
Not the, what is it that Steve Bartlett does? You ask a question for the next guest.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what he does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a new one for next year, next series.
But I guess to round things off is, if someone is particularly interested in developing their knowledge base on women's health and female performance, are there any go-to resources that you would recommend, or any books?
I love how you've just put that in there. That's amazing. What he's referring to is, so myself and a colleague, Jen, who's also in this sort of academic space, but moving out more into the sort of, well, she's like me. She's been in this industry forever. We got very, should we say, frustrated with the resources that were out there. So we wrote a book. It's due for release on the 21st of August. So we'll put the link for you as well. And that's really, it's a practitioner's guide. So it is, you know, you can read it as a woman, or a man wanting to understand a little bit more about the different stages of life and how wellness, strength and movement, you know, changes, and training changes over those different life stages, right from, you know, teenagers all the way up to, you know, sort of fragility and trying to increase longevity as a woman. But it's written, I wanted to write it very much in a bit of you read it and you laugh out loud. Nice. And it's a very... You know, I hope an easy read with some giggles in there as well. We did have to tone it down a little bit, but yeah, I still think it's a good resource, and hopefully what we can, you know, with obviously the connections and the collaborations, and you know, it's been an absolute pleasure to you know, obviously come on today and obviously start working with you guys. I think there is a huge gap in women's health space, and there is a gap, rightly. It's no one's fault. It's just something that hasn't really been advocated for as much as it should in the past. And so, you know, I hope that, you know, with the support of you guys and obviously, you know, really trying to drive, you know, your PT are very forward thinking. You know, you guys are ahead of the game, you know, the client first, but ultimately, you know, trying to get PTs to really understand the future of the industry. And I love that, and that's why we connected so well. So I think this sort of development and moving forward, you know, we hope to have more education in the women's space, don't we? And for those that are interested, you know, most of the, you know, we sort of look at the industry, 50-60% of our clients are females. Females love a PT. So we need to train them better. And if we can train them better, guess what? You know, they'll stay for longer. They'll spend more money with us. You know, everybody wins. And ultimately we can help build, you know, a stronger, more resilient workforce, but also a stronger, more resilient client base as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Could have put it better myself. Thank you so much.
You're very
It's been
welcome.
a pleasure. It feels like the start of a really exciting journey ahead as well. So let's get cracking on doing some education.
Let's get cracking.
Thanks again.
You're welcome.